how cool would it be if your camera came with a built-in consultant? Someone to follow you around, look at the settings that you were picking, and tell you before you even take the picture if it's going to be too dark or too light. Well, I have some good news. Your camera does come in with a built-in consultant. It is called your meter. Your meter is a built-in light sensor in your DSLR camera that is reading what it is taking in and how much light, and determining before you even take that picture if it's going to be too dark or too light. And the meter is something that you can look at on your camera and easily read. When I was learning to use my camera in manual mode, I did all the research I could, I did a lot of practice, but I still just could not use it in manual mode. Every picture was either a little bit dark or a little bit too light. When I finally learned about the meter and understood how to use it, I instantly was able to take pictures in manual mode. It took all the guessing out of what settings I was picking, and I could adjust it before I even took the picture. So make sure you check out some of my other videos if you are still not fully comfortable with your camera settings. I have a Photography 101 video that just gives really basic overview of your camera. And I have 3 other videos that really dive into the camera settings. Once you learn that, you'll be able to understand what I mean in this video when I talk about what settings to change when you're looking at your meter. Now we're going to find the meter on the camera so you can learn how to use it. Pull out your camera, turn it on, and look at the back screen. There should be a meter that looks like this. It should be a line with some hash marks on it. 0 is middle. That means your picture is not too dark or not too light. That is your goal when you're adjusting your settings, is to get the meter to fall on 0. If it falls into the negative numbers, then your picture is going to be too dark. If the meter trails up to the positive numbers, it could be too light. So what you want to do, when you press your trigger halfway down, you can even hear it on your camera. It's taking in everything in the room, all the lighting. It's looking at your camera settings, and it will tell you if it's going to be too dark or too light. It's that simple. Another place that you can see your meter is usually, for most cameras, if you look through your viewfinder, you can see it along the bottom. So that you don't have to keep pulling your camera out to look. When you have it up to your eye, you can gauge if it's going to be too light or too dark. Again, to summarize, reading the meter. If it's a negative number, then your picture is going to be too dark. If it's a positive number like this, then your picture is going to be too light. You want it to be at 0 so that it is perfect. So now you understand what the meter is, where to find it on your camera, and what it is showing, that your picture is either going to be too dark or too light. But how do you use it to adjust your settings to get a better picture? That's easy. First, you have to understand your camera settings though. So if you haven't grasped that, make sure you watch my other videos so that you can understand what happens when you adjust your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. I also have a great resource on my blog at simplysnappingmom.com that shows what's giving you more light, what camera settings you can adjust to let more light into your camera. So we're going to talk it through first, and then I'll show you an example. First, we're going to talk about what happens if your meter says that your picture is going to be too dark. Again, I can't stress enough that you should try to understand the camera settings before you play around with your meter. But if you think about your camera settings, you can do 3 different things if the meter says your picture is going to be too dark. You can open up your aperture. Make that number smaller so your opening is bigger. Then it's letting in more light. Or you can slow down your shutter speed so that your camera lens is blinking slower and letting in more light. The last option is to increase your ISO. You use that to be able to take better pictures in low light, but just keep in mind that the higher you increase your ISO, the grainier your picture can be. I'm going to show you the meter in action right now. I'm going to turn on my camera. Okay. You can see right here that the meter is saying that this picture is going to be too dark. It is pretty dark. Okay. Now what I can do, I can lower my f-stop or I can slow down my shutter speed. I can even increase my ISO. Now you can see that it's saying the picture should be well exposed. And it is a perfect picture. Now we're going to talk about what to do if your picture is too bright. So if the meter is too far on the positive, there's 3 things you can do with your camera settings. You can close up your camera opening more. So make your aperture a bigger number so that it's a smaller opening. It will let in less light. Another option is to increase your shutter speed, because the faster your camera blinks, the less light is coming in. Lastly, you can decrease your ISO. That will allow for better pictures in bright light. Now I'm going to show you what happens when the meter is saying the picture is too bright. So my camera settings, I have them set. My meter is telling me that my picture is going to be too bright. It is pretty bright there. You can hardly kind of see the bear. Now what I'm going to do is adjust my camera settings so that less light can get in the picture. I can do things such as increase my shutter speed. I can increase my f-stop, or I can lower my ISO. Now it's saying that my picture should be good. It's pretty close to 0. And it looks perfect again. Yes, there's one more layer of complexity here. That is the meter modes. What the meter mode is telling your camera where in the picture to evaluate the light. We already know that your camera meter is evaluating the light and telling you if it's too dark or too light. But there are different types of ways it can evaluate that light. One, for example, is spot metering. That is what I use most often. You're telling your camera wherever your focal point is, that is where your camera should be evaluating the light. So if you have a subject standing in front of a dark room, you don't want them to evaluate the light in the dark room. You want your camera to evaluate the subject. So I always use spot metering. Another option is center weighted metering, where your camera, no matter what's going on in the picture, will look at what's in the very center of the picture and base the lighting and the meter off of the center point. Lastly, there's matrix metering. With matrix metering, your camera is looking at the entire frame as a whole and evaluating what it thinks the best lighting point is. Metering is an amazing tool once you learn how to use it, and it is easy. All you have to do is understand where on your camera to look and understand your other camera settings so that you can adjust it to fix the meter and get it closer to that 0 point. When I finally learned how to use my meter, I was able to take my pictures from something like this to something more like this. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you understand your camera settings a little bit more. The best thing you can do is get out there and practice. Change the camera settings all around. Watch my other videos so that you can understand what those settings really mean and practice. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for more updates on photography. Head on over to my Facebook page at facebook.com/simplysnappingblog. And please check out my blog at simplysnappingmom.com, where I have plenty of free videos and printable resources to help you on your photography journey. Thank you.